you an overview of the forum and how it works. Finn will cover what this forum is specifically all about and why we've chosen this topic. We have 3 surprise speakers, who I can see 2 are on the call. So they are actually our forum winners from earlier this year. So they'll just speak to you guys about their tips and tricks and their experience of being in the forum. Then there'll be 25 minutes for any Q&A. So if you do have any questions, just write it down or put it in the chat, and then we'll come to it at, I think it's about 12 o'clock. And then Finn will just quickly wrap up as well. So, right, I'll just get straight to it. So the Innovation Forum is an initiative which we launched last year in the Innovation Lab. Essentially, the reason why we launched it was to look at new ways of working and to explore innovative solutions to industry challenges. So this is actually our 3rd forum. The first one looked at digital literacy and engagement. The second one looked at sustainability and environmental social governance. And this one is all about women and how we close the gender pension gap. So the way that the forum works is through different stage gates. So hopefully you'll be familiar with the dates if you've had a little look at the applicant pack. But the applications close in about 3 weeks on the 10th of September. We'll have an internal shortlisting session after that. And if you're successful and have made it through the first round, you'll find out the week commencing the 18th of September. For any of those initially successful applicants, they will then have the first hybrid pitches on the 30th of October. So we are hosting them in the Innovation Lab in Edinburgh. You can dial in. So Hannah, who'll be speaking later, she did dial in and she still managed to win. We do encourage you to come here in person if you can, but there is, of course, the option to dial in, so don't worry at all. The pitches will be about 10 minutes of pitching and 10 minutes of Q&A, just for the first pitches. And we'll have different shortlisters and mentors from across the business who'll be asking those questions. If you make it through the first pitches, you'll then be going through to our final round, and that is when you'll be matched with mentors from across the business. So they work in all different areas. So they will basically help you refine your pitches, and then also try and target different areas of the Phoenix Group. So we're not expecting you to come up with all the information, because you will get some insider knowledge. We then have the final, again, hybrid pitches on the 5th of December. Again, that will be to an executive judging panel, as well as having the mentors present. So again, great if you can come up in person. If not, dial in is absolutely fine. And then week commencing the 5th of December, we will be choosing a winner or winners. So yeah, just watch out for that. And then essentially once you win the forum, or if you win the forum, that's when we'll try and integrate you into the business and set up a pilot to see what the customers think. So that is essentially how the forum works. So if you've got any questions about dates or anything more, then please just ask me in the Q&A. But I will just hand over to Finn in terms of why we've chosen this forum.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. We are very keen to hear from all of you guys, so I will try my best to keep it short, sharp and sweet. However, I'm not always the best at doing that. So Rebecca, please keep me to time if I start banging on. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about, and I hope you are too. So I thought I'd give a little bit of context as to myself and how we kind of crafted this challenge. Then also talk a little bit about the big topic, the gender pension gap that we're trying to solve for, and then have a few kind of comments really around the application process and things to consider in your application before kind of hopefully opening it up to a bit more of a broader conversation, inviting some of our guests to give their experience. So thanks once again for taking the time to join us today. So my name's Finn Travers-Smith, and I am the Financial Inclusion Manager for the Phoenix Group. I work within our sustainability function, and we see financial inclusion as a core part of social sustainability. So if you think about ESG, the second is S, and that's the kind of part that we look after in our team of customer sustainability. And for us, financial inclusion is about overcoming additional barriers that people face when accessing or understanding their financial services. And I think really the outcome that we're looking to achieve is that a greater number and a greater diversity of people benefit from their financial services and from their providers. So for me, I think that means there's kind of two sides to that coin. One is how can we help customers improve their skills, their confidence, their capability, etc., so that they can interact with us to a greater degree and they can get more out of what we're offering. But there's also another side of that too, which is how can we change and how can we improve what we offer so that we're more human in a way, rather than expecting everyone to fit into how we want them to fit, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my role and where I sit in the business. It's a great position to be, really, because I get to work with all different brands and channels and distribution methods, which is why we've branded this as the Phoenix Group, because we think that there's opportunity to deploy in a number of different areas. And that's why the mentorship segment, I see Hannah nodding, the mentorship part of the forum is really important, because that will help you craft your pitch to target or fit in with a particular distribution and deployment method and a particular business area. So we'll get more into that later down the process, but just as a little kind of acorn to plant, that depending on where you deploy in the business will change or influence the way you pitch and the way to get to market with customers, which is why that's one of the criteria that we'll be looking at later. So on the gender pension gap, the way I think about this is that it's spoken about as if it's one problem, but actually the gender pension gap is an umbrella term for a number of problems that contribute and accumulate over women's life, predominantly, to create this huge gap at the point of retirement. Obviously the gender pay gap is a huge driver of this, but there are a number of other key drivers that are well understood in industry and beyond, including things like caring, divorce, menopause, and many other situations too. Many of them are related to life events, and many of these life events happen or accelerate around what we term the mid-career period, so roughly around 40 to 55 years old. And our internal data tells us that the gender pension gap rapidly accelerates during this period, often as a result of these life events coming at the same time and overlapping, and disproportionately or sometimes exclusively impacting women. So the reason I go into this is because obviously this is a problem and we want to do something about it, but also because I think it gives an opportunity for a great amount of diversity in the potential solutions. We're not going to have one silver bullet that solves the gender pension gap on its own. And in fact, because if you think about the gender pension gap as a accumulation of a number of different issues, then it stands to reason that a number of different solutions will be relevant or appropriate to this challenge. So for example, I just mentioned menopause, divorce, and caring, and we could foresee a situation where we get an application related to each one of those three topics that would look completely different from each other, but all be relevant to this umbrella term of the gender pension gap and that issue. So I encourage you to take a really wide view of this innovation challenge and to think, how can I apply and how can I be relevant, rather than discounting yourself or thinking, you don't address the whole gender pension gap, so maybe you shouldn't apply. That's absolutely not the approach that we want to take with this. So very much encouraging applications to think broad. The last point that I want to make is around targeting. This is mentioned in the application pack, but I appreciate that there's quite a lot of detail in there, lots of endnotes, etc. So just really wanted to draw this out, is that we're not saying that the solutions or the proposals that come in have to be solely targeted at women. It doesn't have to be a product or a service or a proposition that is only open to women. Instead, what we're looking for is to understand how it specifically improves financial inclusion for women. So it can be a proposition for everyone, but there needs to be an argument or a lens or an understanding of how it targets and improves women's finances and their financial engagement and confidence in particular. So again, a really broad way of kind of opening the challenge, and we hope that that encourages as many of you to see your own propositions as relevant to this challenge and to apply post haste. So I think those are the main things that I wanted to address. So Rebecca, I hope I haven't run over time, and I'm happy to pass back to your capable hands.
You're actually under time, unbelievably.
Well, all the more time for questions and answers in that case.
For sure. So Joyce, I can see that you're on the call. I'm not sure if Bart is joining as well, but this is Joyce and maybe Bart from InvestSuite, who were one of our winners from the forum earlier this year. So Joyce will speak to you just about her experience and how it was winning the forum and any tips or tricks. So over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much, Rebecca. And yeah, I apologize. I don't see Bart on here. I spoke to him earlier and he said he would try to make it, but life of a CEO. And so he's, I think, on a train. So maybe he'll call in and pop in. But I did speak to him, and of course, we share the same feedback and tips and tricks. So I'll happily take over. So yes, my name's Joyce. I am head of sales at InvestSuite, which is an invest tech company based out of Belgium, but we're all over Europe essentially. But on the Innovation Forum and the challenge, definitely myself and Bart have only good things to say. It was definitely a positive experience. We've been part of some other innovation challenges or fintech challenges in the past, but I would say this was one that was quite engaging, especially with the various steps that Rebecca had talked about. And of course, it was great to communicate with the team, with Rebecca and the Innovation Forum team. And especially, it was already mentioned earlier, and I really wanted to highlight it, was working with the mentors. I thought I hadn't been part of an innovation challenge that provided you access to mentors. In this case, it was not one, but two. I don't know if that'll be repeated, but we were blessed with communicating with two over the last months of the innovation challenge, and I think that really helped us, not just fine tune our pitch and presentation, and allow us to ultimately win alongside Hannah and the Joy Club, but it also helped us really to understand the problem and the challenge itself, as well as Standard Life, and the broader Phoenix Group. And so a lot of that made it more like an engagement and a partnership rather than simply a challenge that we needed to get through and try to win. And so, I feel, and as well as the mentors feel, now we're quite invested in this partnership and the work that we're doing beyond now. Maybe some other feedback. Yeah, so engagement was really good. Rebecca and the team, as well as the mentors, were always quite responsive, always very helpful. I think I was also asked to maybe comment on why we were interested in applying. So for us, it was quite attractive, it being the second year, to see how successful it was for the first program, which happened, I believe, in 2022. And there was a successful winner and also a proof of concept that was already underway. And so that's always exciting to see, because that's tangible benefit as a company, of course. And then also this year's challenge, we also really liked how the challenge changes. And so you can actually introduce different companies, of course. And so earlier this year's challenge was focused on sustainability and ESG, and how we can communicate that and the impact that Standard Life is having to the pension members or the end investors. And so for us, that was quite near and dear to us. We really focus on client communication, transparency, and improving financial literacy, as well with respect to investment performance, but also ESG. And so having been part of this challenge has actually allowed us to even broaden the scope of our solution, our roadmap essentially. And for us, actually, it was a bit newer. We had already done some work, but going into the pension space was a bit new for us as well, or newer to us. So that was quite exciting. Let me just see here. And then the last thing, I think maybe some tips. So for us, I think a couple tips only. So I would say, again, just bringing back the mentors. I would really leverage and engage that engagement. So I think what we did on our end is, once we got our mentors assigned to us, we met with them, and we met with them at least on a weekly basis, because I think for the last final pitches, we had almost a month to work on them. And so, yeah, we met with them at least on a weekly basis, really getting to understand more about the challenge and how we can adapt our previous pitch to essentially a more refined pitch to the larger executives, because the last and final pitch is to the executive team. And so that was really, really quite helpful. There was a bit of back and forth in a quite positive and engaging way. So I think, yeah, the first tip would be to really leverage those mentors, because they understand not just the challenge, but they understand the company and they understand the group. So very, very useful there. And also on that, understanding the challenge, What we did is we have a solution at InvestSuite already, but by working with the innovation team as well as our mentors, we really refine not just our pitch, but if you can refine or adapt your solution already to the pitch. So we were able to adapt a proof of concept version of the solution already to their needs. If you have the capacity to do that, of course, we're all rising startups here and rising fintech, so understand some resource constraints here and there. But if you can, I absolutely recommend doing that. And then lastly, if it is accessible to you, if you can visit Edinburgh. So we were able to visit Edinburgh both for the initial pitches and the second pitches. But of course, as Hannah will attest to, she did a fantastic job just tuning in online as well. But it's more for the experience, and they've got a lovely innovation lab that I think Rebecca's sitting in right now. So it's worth the visit. And of course, Edinburgh is a wonderful city if you're not from there, or if you are from there. So if that's accessible to you, I do recommend that as well. I think that's it. Rebecca, if there's anything else, I'm happy to address in Q&A.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much. I can also see that Bart's on the call, so I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add, but I think Joyce has done a pretty good job.
I think she's done an amazing job, Rebecca, and I'm on my train in Switzerland, so it's a bit shaky here. But yeah, maybe just one very quick thing. We've been with InvestSuite in many innovation programs over the past 5 years, and yeah, Joyce and was also involved in those, and this was definitely for us the best one. The mentors is a great thing, the professionalism is fantastic, and what I also appreciated is the very fast feedback, and I really think that's very key to mention. You guys didn't let us wait; it was right away. You send a mail, you get feedback, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. That was it from the train in Switzerland.
Thanks, Bart.
Thanks so much. All right, thank you both. Hannah, can we move on to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would join with Joyce in recommending that you do go up to Edinburgh if you have the chance. I had COVID for the final pitch, so I was remotely dialing in and pitching with my pajama bottoms on my bottom and then my shirt and my suit on the top. I just about made it through. But yeah, absolutely. If you have the opportunity to go to Edinburgh, I would recommend that you would do that. So yeah, I'm Hannah. I'm the founder CEO of the Joy Club, and alongside the amazing InvestSuite, we were one of the winners of the ESG challenge, and so we're going to be putting the social into the ESG activity of Standard Life and Phoenix Group by supporting their members on the journey to and through retirement. And it was a brilliant experience for us. We were trying to figure out, how could we get into Standard Life, how we can get into Phoenix Group, and had actually reached out back in, last year, I think about November, December time. And we'd had a few email exchanges and a couple of conversations, but then the team signposted us to the Innovation Forum as a way to accelerate the process and have some, structure around that partnership negotiation and progress. So that was really effective for us. So we applied in April. It was then the first pitch in May, and then we had a couple of months with the mentors before then doing the final pitch in July, and then found out that we were successful. It was only about, I think, a week or two after the final pitch that we found out. And then you're immediately into planning how to actually bring this to the members of Standard Life. So you immediately roll into bringing this into a real life partnership, which is really exciting. So I think the pace of the process is really exciting. And I love Rebecca just mentioning the timeline there, that you find out before Christmas. Like, what an amazing Christmas present that would be, to go off and celebrate, knowing that in the new year you'll be really entering into an enormous partnership opportunity with a massive player. And I think that's the other really exciting thing about this. You get to solve one of, in my opinion, society's biggest challenges around the gender pension gap with, one of the biggest, if not the biggest players. Phoenix Group has 12 million customers. So your opportunity to have impact at scale here is just enormous. So I think, I'm sure there are lots of busy founders on the call thinking, what are my odds with this process? is it worth the time? And I think the size of the prize in terms of impact is so enormous that it absolutely, I would say, you know, if your innovation meets this challenge, then I would totally recommend that you apply and move forward in the process. And then in terms of tips, so 3 key tips I think I have in terms of the process. So the first one, and you've heard this a lot already, but make the most of your mentors. It really is a fantastic opportunity to be able to have, you know, such a high volume of frequent feedback from people who sit within Phoenix Group and within Standard Life, you know, for us. And you have about 2 months in between that first pitch and the final pitch, and that might seem like a lot of time, but I would say, you know, it absolutely flies by. So it's a good idea, as soon as you're, you know, you've heard that you're successful in that first pitch and you're introduced to your mentors, then build that relationship, build that rapport, you know, get a call in at least weekly, make sure you're sharing materials in advance of the call so that they can give you their feedback. And what that means is that by the time you get to the final pitch, you've gone through several iterations of the presentation deck, you've gone through several iterations of the content, the commercials, and you can be really confident then that you're speaking in the right vocabulary, and also that what you're pitching and the commercials that you're pitching are, you know, fit for purpose. And so that is a really good way of increasing your likelihood of success at the final stage, I would say. The second tip I would say would be to really think carefully about how you are articulating how your innovation meets the challenge. And we heard earlier from Finn that actually, you know, there's a really broad range of things. It might be a care thing or a divorce thing or a menopause thing that actually solves this challenge. So it's not enough to be a great fintech startup, you know, that is required. Well, maybe not even fintech in this particular instance, but it's not enough to be a great startup with a great innovation. You really need to meet the challenge. And so spending the time thinking through how you're articulating that your innovation is meeting the challenge is, again, a really good way of increasing your chance of success, because then the people that are listening to your pitch can go, yeah, I can really clearly see how this innovation meets the challenge. So there's really good grounds for taking it forward. So again, busy founders, I think sometimes the temptation can be to default to the standard materials that you might have already about your business. But I think, you know, this is a challenge-led innovation process. So think really carefully about the challenge, get to grips with the materials that Phoenix Group have provided, and then articulate in a really compelling way how your innovation meets that challenge. And then finally, I would say tip 3 is to deliver a really engaging pitch, even if you have COVID and you're having to dial in remotely in your pajamas. And the things that I try and hit in a pitch are mind, wallet, and heart. So like mind, you know, is your pitch intellectually and logically sound? You know, are you articulating how you meet the challenge? Does it fit in with the broader Phoenix Group strategy? You know, for that executive judging panel, are they going to be able to intellectually really just understand exactly how this would fit into what Phoenix Group is offering? So that's mind. And then wallet, obviously the numbers have to stack up. So make sure that the commercials are sound, you know, use your mentors for that. Make sure that it's a fair reflection of the value that you can deliver the business and that you can justify that you will deliver the business. And then finally, heart. I think if you can move people, you know, if you can engage with people emotionally, then you're far more likely to be memorable. And being memorable in one of these processes is really important, because there are lots of very compelling startups pitching. So you want to make sure that you are front of mind for that executive judging panel. So yeah, those are my 3 tips. Make the most of your mentors, refine how you're articulating how your innovation meets the challenge, and then deliver an engaging pitch. And good luck to everybody. I'm very happy to take questions in the Q&A.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah. Just before we move on to Q&A, there's just a couple of things. Please do share this forum with anybody that you think might be relevant, or any companies. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've got less of a chance, because there could be more than one winner, as obviously we've shown from on the call. And also, one of the runners-up from the forum earlier in the year, they didn't win the forum, but there's actually a working group within Standard Life who are desperately trying to get them integrated into Standard Life, even though that's not through the platform of the forum. So even just through the exposure of the forum, there's, I think, probably about 7 or 8 people desperately trying to get them in. So even if you don't end up winning, there's still a lot of exposure to people within Standard Life and Phoenix Group. So just remember that. Okay, so we'll open it up to Q&A. So if you can either type in the chat any questions, or just pop your hand up and we'll pick somebody. Megan.
Hey there. Thanks for that. That was super helpful. Really good to hear from previous winners as well. I've been in a couple of innovation forums as well, and not had much of that kind of experience of hearing directly from the horse's mouth. So yeah, really appreciate it. My question was, so on your application, it says like the second thing that you'll be judging it from a weighting perspective is like the strategic fit with the business. And obviously I read the materials around about that, but I was just wondering if there's like any like key quantifiable KPIs that you're trying to achieve out of this that would just be useful to know.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So I think the short answer is no, there's not predefined KPIs or deliverables that we're looking for. And part of the reason is because of that umbrella concept that I was talking about earlier. We don't want to define that we want to see, you know, X, Y, Z KPIs, because I think that starts to shape the solution that we would expect to see. Whereas, as I tried to describe earlier, I think that there's actually quite a good range of opportunity that we hope will come in and that could be coming in. So I think defining the KPIs around that might sort of slightly limit that. That said, you know, to Hannah's point earlier, certainly I think it would make a pitch more persuasive to be quite clear on what the KPIs would be, what would we essentially be buying, and how will we measure success. That will always go down well, particularly in the pitches. And I think in terms of understanding the strategic fit, you know, I've mentioned on that slide, I'm just looking at it now, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I did meant to go through that a little bit in my speech, so maybe it was under time for a reason. But you know, there's 2 things I think for the strategic fit with the business. One is that the mentors will help guide you with that if you're taken through to shortlisting phase, and that will definitely be a good thing to pick up with them, because there are a number of big agendas that we have on the go at the moment, some of them more in the public domain than others. So the mentors will help you kind of ride those waves, if you like, or to understand those kind of currents, and then be able to leverage them for your bid. But the second thing I would say is definitely take a look at our sustainability strategy, particularly the bit around engaging people in financial futures. That's got quite a lot of quite in-depth information about what we've done so far, but crucially why we're doing it. And to Hannah's point again, the type of vocabulary and speaking the language that the group uses, I think will go a long way to helping situate that bid, that pitch, and make it kind of feel a good fit, obviously depending on the rest of the content. So yeah, for strategic fit, I would say no, there's not predefined KPIs, but we would love to see you tell us about your KPIs and how we would measure success. The mentors will help you work on strategic fit and our commercial and sustainability objectives. And I would also strongly recommend looking at the sustainability report that the group publishes, particularly the section around people and the S of ESG.
Amazing, thank you, super clear.
Thanks, Megan. Mark?
Yeah, hi, Mark Whitcroft, founder of Hazel. We provide property and financial guidance for older adults. And thanks to everybody for the comments, it's been very insightful. Question being age range. I don't know, Finn, whether you're going to give me a similar answer there around lack of focus, but it'd be good to know maybe from Phoenix perspective, your customer sort of age bucketing, and therefore how that might fit with the people applying for the challenge. Thanks.
Absolutely, great question. So I guess there's a number of different strands to my answer. I think first and foremost, we are a pensions and long-term savings provider. So a lot of our customers are either approaching retirement, or some of them, particularly in the annuities area and retirement solutions area, which includes things like equity release, they will be post-retirement age. So I think it's natural to assume that many of the interventions that we will be looking at, both within this process and outside of it, will be focused around kind of retirement age or approaching retirement age. So, that kind of 55 plus. But as I said earlier, I think another strand to my answer is that we see the gender pension gap rapidly accelerating between the ages of 40 and 55. So a lot, in fact, I would say almost all of the work that I do personally within the group is focused at that 40 to 55 age range, which we call mid-career. And I think is fair to say that that is definitely not approaching retirement, particularly with things like the state pension age going up year on year, or so it seems, so it feels. So I think those are two kind of, or three key potential age categories that you could plausibly make a bid for, which is mid-career, 40 to 55, 55 plus, which is approaching retirement, and then retirees. And this speaks to my point earlier about it depends where you deploy in the business, because different areas of the business will have different operating models, but also different product types. And so therefore, if your solution is most appropriate for an annuitant, for example, that's going to look and feel very different than if it's based on a workplace pension member who still has a lot of time to increase contributions or change the funds that they're in and the equity mix, and therefore change their presumed sort of financial outcome at the end. The last strand I want to say in terms of age is that I personally, as a financial inclusion SME, have been looking at Generation Z and what are we doing to engage our customers of the future. At the moment, if you look at us as a group, we don't have a high proportion of younger customers. I think our proportion of younger customers is growing, partly in large part as a result of auto enrollment. And so I'm not discounting or excluding any innovation that applies to people 40 years old or younger, or 39 years old or younger. And in fact, I'm having conversations constantly internally to encourage us to move more in that direction, because if you look at the move from DB to defined benefit to defined contribution schemes, the direction of travel, both in industry and in government, is that more and more responsibility is placed on the individual to save for their own retirement and to create their own financial resilience and security. And I don't believe that that is well understood by the public at large. If you look at prediction models, particularly those that our longevity think tank Phoenix Insights has released, and there's some great insights in their work, the current trajectory is that baby boomers, particularly high-income baby boomers, are heading for a good standard of life in retirement. And as you go down the generations and as you go down the income scales, there are fewer and fewer, or there's a lower and lower proportion of those income bands and of those generations that are heading for a minimum lifestyle retirement, at least in terms of the savings that we can see, the long-term pensions and savings that we can see. So that's a very, very long-winded way of saying that there's no age banding. We're open to ideas for everything from 18 years old when you can first pick up a pension, right the way through to you're a current annuitant, and maybe there's other solutions that we can help you with to improve your financial standing. But what I would say is the more clear you can be about who your target audience is and how your solution helps that target audience, particularly with relation to the gender pension gap or one of its many contributors, then your pitch will be heading a long way towards some of those proof points that Hannah was mentioning so well earlier. So that would be my response, but happy to talk more about that elsewhere. And I don't have a breakdown of our customer base by age at my fingertips, but that's I'm not sure around commercial sensitivity on that either, so I'd have to kind of look into that. But certainly I can kind of continue that conversation and have a kind of broad answer if this answer wasn't already broad enough and informative enough for you, Mark.
And if there is anything which we can share more broadly, obviously we can send that around everybody who's in this right now, and any future people that might be watching this on record.
In fact, having said that, I know that there's so I mentioned the sustainability report, but we also have a stewardship report as well in the same area of our website. And I know that publicly publishes the proportion of our customers as a group that are either over 55 or under 55. So that's like one very, very broad-based cut. But I'll look in to see if there's anything else that we have already published in the public domain that gives a little bit more detail than that, because that's quite a blunt instrument in some ways. There's a question on the chat, and I think there was another hand raised as well. I'm not sure who came first. Rebecca?
Yes, I think the question in the chat was first. That's Alex. How does the Phoenix Group currently build trust and lifelong relationships? Oh, do you want to speak it, or do you want me to read it?
Sorry, I was seeing if the microphone was okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. Thanks ever so much, Finn and others. And it was how you currently, as the Phoenix Group, try to build trust and develop these types of lifelong relationship with customers, which sometimes as a pension person you feel is one way. How do you try to personalize those at the moment? Are you allowed to? Is it something you reflect on, or is it something that is possibly coming for this challenge?
It's a great question, and I think the truth is that there's not one answer. So just to give a bit of background, the Phoenix Group originated as a closed book consolidator. Now we have an open division as well, predominantly Standard Life. And so as a group as a whole, essentially what we have is a number of different brands, all with different histories, operational models, identities essentially, and many of those will have different relationships with their customers depending on the type of product, the history of how that customer was acquired. If you're a closed book consolidator, then you'll have a mixture of different different customers that originated from different areas. So the example that I always give with this regard is there's a book that we bought many years ago called the Century Book, which itself was a collection of 100 further books. So you can already see, and that's one of hundreds that we have. So you can already see that the experience of a Phoenix Group customer is not sort of there's a diversity of experience as to how they became a Phoenix Group customer. I think it's much easier to speak to your question as it relates to Standard Life, because Standard Life, as a workplace provider, has a much more sort of visible presence, I think, in people's life, and we're certainly taking great steps when it comes to customer engagement on the digital side of things. So we've just recently released an open finance app called Money Mindset. So this helps you kind of plan and budget your expenditure, and has feeds in from everything from other pensions to investments and current accounts, etc. So I think that's one way that we're trying to kind of be more present and more helpful in our customers' lives. And there's a number of other kind of initiatives as well that I've been involved with and that other teams are driving. I think the Vulnerable Customer team deserves a shout out here, which is group wide, actually, not just for the Standard Life brand, which is, has won multiple awards, and I would say is probably one of the jewels in our crown, in the sense that, we do a lot of work, a lot of effort, both to train individuals that so our call centers, for example, everyone is trained on vulnerable customers, and but also to have teams that deal with complex cases and are well kind of armed, if you like, to do so, but also training all of our internal staff, whether they're customer facing or not, to have to understand not only our responsibilities under Consumer Duty, but how can we go further when it comes to vulnerability in general. And there's lots of engagement work both with customers and with colleagues on those topics. In terms of personalization, I think it's a tricky question, because again, it depends on the product they hold, the brand which owns that product or which they bought that product from, and also in many cases their own marketing preferences. There are nuances within the business whereby some customers we can contact with some types of engagements and others we can't, as I'm sure you appreciate, GDPR world, legitimate interest assessments and all the rest of it. There's a huge diversity essentially of who we contact, what we contact them with, and the extent to which they engage with us on that. So I think it's hard to answer your question directly in terms of how we build trust and lifelong relationships. But there was part of your question where you said, is this something that you think about? And is this something that you sort of care about? And my answer would be categorically yes. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why we're undertaking this this innovation challenge in general. But more broadly, we have a huge agenda, as I said, on engaging people in their financial futures. This is not only one of the 3 core pillars of our overarching group sustainability strategy, but it also lines up with the work that Phoenix Insights are doing that I mentioned earlier around longevity. The think tank is based around exploring the implications of increasing longevity and what does that mean for health, for pensions, for society. And I think the conclusion that we are coming to and where more and more of our resources are being targeted is, partly what I spoke to Mark about earlier, is we know that there's more and more responsibility on the individual. How can we support individuals not only to understand that, but to interact with it to their benefit? And that's, part of, as I said, why we're doing this program, but also many other programs alongside. So sorry, I can't give a direct answer, but the truth is it's complicated.
And just to continue from what Finn said, again, focused on Standard Life, in terms of building trust and lifelong relationships, we have the app Money Mindset, and we also have Home Buyer Hub. So this is something which is aimed at either first-time buyers, second-time buyers, or even the parents of those who are going through the process of buying their first house. And this is essentially an app integrated within the Standard Life app, which is like a digital home buying coach. And that's got different guides, it's got different steps. You can create like a to-do list. It's really, really helpful. And essentially that is trying to capture people when they're young. We're not selling anything, it's literally just there as a digital coach. And then the idea is then, turning them into lifelong customers. So that's just one example. And in terms of personalization, the app is really personalized, as is the online customer dashboard. And we have things like personalized videos as well. So they have personalized experiences, all of their messaging is personalized to them. So hopefully that gives a kind of fully rounded answer. Alex, I can see you're still typing. Feel free to just speak out loud.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, was it Home Buyer Hub?
Home Buyer Hub, yeah.
Great,
so
thanks.
To access
thanks very much.
You have to go through the Standard Life app, and it's within the actions and tools section.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. Yeah, really useful additional context. And, I think my answer, I was trying to focus on the group as a whole, but you're absolutely right. There are a number of different initiatives, tools, applications that we also have. Rebecca's mentioned a few of the key ones, but there are many others as well at various stages of size and development, from small scale pilots right through to kind of scaling new business areas, essentially. So, we have things around guidance and advice. We have retirement webinars. I'm running a program around the gendered impact of life events with our workplace clients. So there's lots and lots of pockets of activity and initiatives around the business that we could go into more detail on, as well as those sort of specific examples that Rebecca kindly provided.
So this is obviously just Standard Life specific, and this is a Phoenix Group initiative, but I have just shared the financial wellbeing webpage from Standard Life. So that covers a bit more about Home Buyer Hub and, as Finn was saying, Money Mindset, and just another few things about financial wellness, which is really important to the business as a whole. So feel free to have a browse of that. Michael, I think you had your hand up before, but it's gone down, so I'm not sure if you're still wanting to ask a question.
Thank you. No, I did. I was going to ask the question about, I think it's really important that we educate and inform the younger elements to make sure the younger, I wasn't going to say women, the younger women, so that, the gap obviously widens as you get older. But it's really important that these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds become financially confident and are able to set themselves on the right path. So although we've been talking about the sort of 40, 50 plus, I think that is an element that we need to make sure that we deal with. But Finn gave a very good answer on it, so I took my hand down. So thank you very much.
Well, I absolutely agree, Michael. And one thing that struck me, I got a notification earlier today, which was from Apple News, and it said what you need to know if you're, getting your A-level results today. And one of the bullet points was, your financial options. And I thought this is really interesting. I think the industry as a whole has kind of missed a bit of a trick here because, I've got younger brother and sister who are in Gen Z, and I've heard them talking to each other about financial influencers on TikTok, on Instagram. I've had my younger brother send me cryptocurrency tips from some random person on the internet. And now I've got Apple News telling me what I need to know as a 16, 17-year-old who's just got my A-levels. Where is Phoenix Group in this? Where is any of our competitors on this? Where is the engagement with Gen Z? It's hard. In some ways, from a commercial perspective, it's hard to make the pitch that we need to do that, because when you look at assets under management and you look at product holdings and number of customers, Gen Z is this big, and all the other generations go up. That's natural. You start your career with very limited wealth, most of us, and you build that up over time. So to future-proof our business as much as the moral and social imperative, we need to be looking at those younger customers, particularly as we see increasing innovation, not only in wider society when it comes to the pace of change with AI and other things like this, but also the increasing innovation within finance. 20 years ago, finance was, maybe 30 years ago now, a bit longer than that, finance was kind of a slumbering beast, a slow-moving giant. And now you've got all sorts of things from open banking, open finance, platform economies. The whole apps market has just absolutely radicalized finance in so many ways. And we're still at the really early stages of that. So you've got things like TikTok and Instagram and other cryptocurrencies kind of filling in a gap where mainstream established financial providers haven't really kind of cottoned on, in my view, to the opportunity in that area, but also the social need in that area. Because I don't want to get my financial education from Crypto Tips 675 on Threads or something. I want to get it from a company or an organization or even an individual like Martin Lewis, who I believe genuinely has A, my trust, and B, my best interests at heart. And so I completely agree with you, Michael. And to be honest, I think if we got a really powerful and persuasive applicant that was focused on younger generations through the Innovation Forum, that would really help us make that case internally. Hannah, you were saying that you were interacting with the business and this kind of turbocharge your route in. It's the same for us. We are looking for innovations and opportunities that can help us internally turbocharge some of our agendas and some of our arguments that we're making to senior stakeholders and purse string holders around the business, essentially. So, we, as mentioned by all of the winners earlier, we do see this as a genuine collaboration, a genuine partnership, and I think there's a lot of opportunity that comes from that approach.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Okay. Right. I've just sent the Innovation Forum mailbox into the chat. So if there's anything else for myself or Finn. Oh, Alex?
Sorry, I was just going to say, Rebecca, it was a question to ask. Can I put in a challenge that's happening in Scotland at the moment about the menopause? It's from the Scottish government, and it sort of shows the growing realization of how these challenges can develop across ways and address matters. Is it all right to put in a reference for the other companies if they want to have a look?
Absolutely. Yeah, please do. Thank you. Okay, fab. So if anybody thinks of any other questions, please do email the mailbox, and one of the Innovation Forum team will get back to you. So I'll just quickly hand over to Finn to do a close. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Rebecca, and huge thanks to everyone who's turned up. A really stimulating conversation. I hope it's been useful and informative for you as you think about potentially writing an application. As I hope I've made quite clear throughout, I would strongly encourage you to do so, and very much looking forward to seeing what comes through the door. huge thanks to Joyce, Hannah, and I believe Bart's now left the call. Maybe he's gone into a Swiss tunnel. But really appreciate your insights and to hear your views. And from a personal perspective, it was great to hear that it was such a positive experience for you both as well. So thank you very much for sharing that. Thanks to all those who joined and shared some questions, and also obviously to anyone who's watching on demand as well. We look forward to carrying on the conversation and to seeing those applications come in. So yeah, have a great day and really appreciate your time.